Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's edition of Wild Wednesday webinar. My name is Paul Kiewit. I'm the Executive Director of MIPA, and I'm glad you can join us today for another great presentation. Today's presentation is worth 1 CAS credit. At the end of today's webinar, when I hit the end the meeting button, you'll be directed to a survey. If you complete that survey, enter your PIN number, I will submit that to PPAI to get your credit. If you don't know your PIN number and you're not a member of MIPA, you'll have to contact your own regional director to get that. Wild Wednesday webinars are sponsored by TISPA, OPA, MIPA, PPA Chicago, PPA Wisconsin, PPA Midwest, UMAP, and the Arizona Promotional Products Association. On the left-hand side of your screen, you'll find a chat box. I'll be monitoring that, but T is going to be starting out with some questions that people submitted when they registered and has those prepared. And we'll be handling the questions as they afterwards with a special question and answer period. I'll be monitoring the chat box, and if I see something that I think warrants me interrupting her, I will jump in and say, hey, T, we got a question. Can you take care of that for us? Also, I'd like you to mark your calendars on August 31. You can learn about engagement in a digital world. Learn about how to be more effective with social media like Facebook, with your websites, with your blog, with your email marketing. It's going to be presented by Tiffany Tarr from Distributor Central, and it's going to be another good one. I'm really pleased to introduce today's speaker. T. Hamilton is really a designer extraordinaire who really specializes in this industry. If you've been in this industry and you've been paying attention and you see cool graphics, there's a good chance that T was the designer behind it. She does a lot of work with commonsku, inventing the ScrewBot for MIPA Open TISPA. She invented the Tom character from the Tom shows, and that goes back to some experience she had working in Australia, working for their equivalent of the Beanie Baby company. Wasn't that, but it was the Australian equivalent of that, designing plush toys and animals. She knows design, she knows art, and she knows what suppliers are begging for when they want good artwork. And she also has worked with a lot of distributors trying to get the information that she needs in order to do great work. So from everything from what's the difference between vector and raster art to the design process and the qualities that make a great logo, she'll handle all of your questions. And T, I'm going to let you take it away. T.
Woohoo! Thanks, Paul. Now, I don't really need to say anything else about myself. We can actually get straight onto it here. So ask the designer. That's me. I am a cartoon. Okay, number one, I'm going to get right into it right here. And this is a little bit different for us. So it's like Paul said, if you got something, if you have a question that you think is going to really contribute or that you need to know about when I'm talking here, Paul will interrupt. But if not, try to hold those off to the end and we'll tackle it there. So number one, I got this question from someone. It said, I need a designer for a project. I always have trouble estimating how long something might take to complete or what the design charge is going to be, or what the design charge might be, so I can charge my customer accordingly. Can you help? And this is this how long's a piece of string thing, right? Number one, if you have a designer that you regularly, that you work with on a regular basis, ask them to come up with a price time schedule, which is going to help. Now, this is just basic stuff for, okay, if somebody wants a brochure, a 3-page brochure, it approximately takes this much time to do. If someone wants a basic logo done, it approximately takes this much time to do. Okay, you need to sort of communicate to your customer that those are rough estimates only. Okay, because they may throw a loop in there for you that all of a sudden it's going to take quite a bit more time or something. We don't want to sort of say something that would normally take 5 hours ends up taking 20 is going to be the same price. Another thing too is if you don't have a designer, you may want to call one right when your project starts and try. And what we like, speaking as a designer, what we like is as much information about the project before we even start it, because that's going to eliminate a lot of changes down down the way. And we do this through what we call a designer creative brief. For the industry, I'm going to put together some points here, and at the end, I've got this as a PDF, so if anybody wants this, I can send it on to, or Paul can send it on to them. A creative brief, number one, we want to know about a brief but detailed overview of the whole project. Okay, from start to finish, whatever you expect that project to be about. Number two is describe the client to the designer. So we want to know, as designer, what does that client do? What are their likes and dislikes, if that's important? What kind of business do they have? So then that way, and if they have a website, send us the website, because that's going to be a telltale of a whole lot of stuff that we're going to be able to use. Number three, objective. What is or are the main objectives that you're trying to achieve with this project? What is the desired outcome? Is it so, you're running an event and you need a logo for that event and you want to attract a certain kind of people we want to know this kind of stuff. Number four, target audience. Who is the project meant for? And this is something that's important for you guys to know too, yourselves. So who is the project meant for? The designer will have a better idea who they're creating design for if they know what that target audience is. Timeline, of course, when do you need the artwork by? And I suggest that if you tell the client or you tell the designer that you need something, tell them that you give a couple of days in there before you tell the client that you're going to have artwork done by a certain time, because when we deliver the artwork to you, we may find that we've misspelled something or there's something that needs to be changed. And it's really difficult if we're supposed to deliver something on the exact same day that you're supposed to deliver something, okay? Deliverables, what do you expect and require the artist to provide? If it's just that we give you a logo, we're going to give you that logo. We're going to give you that piece of artwork, right? But if you want us to actually create a virtual for you with it, we need to know that too, okay? And then budget, and discuss what your intended budget is for the project, okay? Because here we kind of get into the design process, the design pricing aspect of it. So as I said, communicate your budget with your designer. If we know that there's a really tight budget on something, then we can sort of design towards that budget, right? Changes and edits. An additional price for changes will need to be factored in. So if you let your client know, or your customer personally, know that there's going to be a price that will come with excessive changing, then they won't do that. Okay. So it's really, it's kind of a little trick for you too. So, of course, we're going to throw in a couple of changes with the price that we give you, but if somebody comes back and they want to make change after change after change after change, and the deadline doesn't change, we sort of go a little insane. And then your designer is going to estimate a price for the project. If you need to stick to that price, you need to let your designer know that there's not going to be any flexibility in that. So if your customer says, if you say to your customer, okay, it's going to be a $300 art charge, you need to let your designer know that it's $300, that's it. Okay. So if any issues come up early, we can let you know that there's going to be a problem. And number four, and be fair, because your designer has bills to pay as well. This is our business, like you have your business. And there are companies that tout that they can do design work for outrageously cheap prices out there, but you get what you pay for. So if you get a $5 logo, you're going to get a $5 logo. You're going to get a JPEG that you cannot change without having to pay a lot more money for it. Okay. So there's no freebies in this. I mean, you can occasionally get lucky with a cousin's, aunt's, friends, so-and-so who knows how to use Photoshop and can do a good logo for you. But more than likely, you're going to have to pay a little bit for this work. And if if your budget is tight, but you're requiring your designer to make a lot of changes, do us a favor and give us an extension on that deadline, right? Because we will love you for that. We'll be happy to not charge the extra if we get a little extra time to work into it. Next question. I sent my vendor a customer's logo as an EPS file. Now this is a big one, and I hear about this all the time. He told me that it wasn't a vector file. I thought all EPS or PDFs were vector. What's going on? All files can be created with embedded JPEGs or rasterized images inside of them. Okay, that's not the great way of making a file, but you can do it. And if you don't really know a whole lot about Illustrator or how to make a vector file, you're going to see this. You know, I can create, and I'll show you in a second how very easy it is to create put a JPEG into a vector file and call it an EPS file, and but there's no magical thing that's going to ever turn that into a vector at that point. So let's kind of look at demo time here. Between a raster and a vector file is made up of programs that mathematically calculate paths and curves, so you get really nice clean look about it. A raster is made up of a grid of pixels, and it's fixed, so you can't edit that. I'll show you here, and I hope that this is coming across to everybody okay. When I click on this vector file right here, I'm seeing something that is all outlined. So that I see the artwork outlined, I see the whole thing outlined here, and all the fonts and stuff like this are nice and outlined. That's a true vector file. When I click on this file down here, you'll notice that the artwork isn't outlined. And I encourage everybody to get a copy of Illustrator. Whether or not it's even an old version of Illustrator, it works just as well. Newer ones, you can get an Adobe Creative Cloud account. Doesn't cost that much money because, if artists can afford it, you guys can too. So I really encourage everybody to have Illustrator if you can. I think CorelDRAW might do the same thing, but this is going to be the easiest way of seeing this kind of stuff. So going back to this is a raster file. And I can see this too. When I change my window to outline, I can see this logo that's outlined here. So I know that that's vector because of all the paths and curves. And down here, I don't see nothing. So I know that that file is not being created properly. So if I come up to, I'm going to go back over to preview. So this is live action stuff that's happening right here. This right here, I called this Awesome Sauce Bad PDF, right? Because I open this up and I can look and see the outline and I see nothing there, right? So that wasn't a vector file. Next question. Why do colors of the virtual that I get from my vendor not always match the product when it's delivered? And this is because when you're viewing an art file on your computer, you're looking at this in RGB, right? That's red, green, and blue, those three colors. A mix of those three colors, which then is what you're seeing. You're also seeing it with a monitor that has a light coming through it. So you're going to see neons as neon as they can possibly be. You're going to see, the whitest of whites and the blackest of blacks and stuff like this. Now, when the artwork is actually printed onto a product, it more than likely will have been printed in a 4-color process, which is CYMK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, or spot color, which is a PMS color. Okay, and we'll get to that in a second. And unless the product is glowing, right? Maybe you got something from a company, it's a glowing thing, and you print the thing onto it, and it's going to look exactly like that virtual you get. If not, you need to educate your client that what they're seeing when they get that virtual, that there is going to be slight color difference when they actually get it. For instance, red, green, and blue. This is what the monitor is showing you. This is what happens when it's printed. So if I'm going back and forth between these two, you can see how these colors might be a little bit messed up when one tries to emulate the other. If say like you ever had a website and you printed off something you had on the internet on your printer, and you see it looks a little muddy or gray looking or fuzzy looking or whatever, that's because your printer's taking this RGB and it's turning into CMYK. Okay. We also have spot colors, like one specific ink color, similar to like a PMS. And I hope you all guys have a PMS book by now. I know you suppliers definitely have them, but distributors, if you do not have a PMS book, go get yourself a PMS book. I know that they have some discounts on them with PPAI if you haven't got one already. So if you're using if you're getting a sign off on a project using a virtual, educate your customer that there's a good possibility the colors might shift or look differently in the final product. And if they're really super picky about it, know that they're going to complain a little bit that, hey, that blue is not exactly my blue and blah, blah, blah. Then you need to get their PMS color of that blue. And this might be simple stuff to some, but, you know, get a PMS color of that particular color that you're trying to match. And that way it's going to nail all those problems of those color shifts as much as possible. There are always going to be a little bit of shifting, you know, because sometimes a PMS color may be changed to a 4 color. So a PMS color, a spot color may be changed to a CMYK, that 4 color process. So there's a little bit of a change, but you're going to get a better result in the end. Now, next question. What does the design process look like and how do you come up with the final result? And I found this little diagram here, which I think is really super cool because it really does sort of explain how designers get their information, and you know, how we kind of put everything together to an end result. Number one, we get that brief from you. Like I said, that creative design brief's delivered to us, so we kind of go through it all and we talk to you a little bit about what your needs are. Then we take all that information, we do our research. So we're going to look at the customer's website and we're going to get on Pinterest and we're going to start looking at what kind of things are trending in ways of color and product and all this, no matter what it is, even if it's a particular kind of logo we think that we're developing. Then we're going to come up with some concepts from this point. And what we call these, what we show you at this point are roughs, what we say roughs. That means they're kind of almost done, but not really. Okay, they should never be considered done at this point because this is where all the changes can be made. This is also a great time for if you've got a really good relationship with your customer where you can take the work that we're giving you and you can show it to them. We love to hear that feedback directly from the customer at that point. Do they like something? Do they want 2 different concepts to be mixed, right? Do they want to change a color at this point? And if they like a particular thing, you tell us, yep, we're ready to go on. They like concept number 4, run with it. Then we work out that final design. And then 5, we give it to you. Okay, now I know that launch seems a little bit silly, but it is part of it because what we need from you guys at this point, designers wear their hearts on their sleeves and their emotions on their sleeves. If your client really loved the work, right? Don't just go away and never say anything again. Come back and let us know that, hey, so-and-so really loved this or they really hated it or whatever. Because if we hear the love, we're going to give you the love back. If not, we're going to consider that something terrible's happened and we're going to worry about it forever. So next question. I'm having trouble with fonts. Sometimes my vendor will require that artwork will have fonts that are outlined or flattened. I'm not sure what that means. This means that fonts in a document are still able to be edited. And it's dangerous to send a file over with a font that hasn't been changed to outlines at any point. This goes for you too in your own marketing pieces and your own logo and everything else, because sometimes the system will just substitute a font with some other font. And you can, ugh, you know, there used to be a time where Courier used to come up. If they didn't have the right font, you get Courier, and it was yucko, right? So let's go back to this little page here. This example with Awesome Sauce here, if I click on this logo down here with my arrow tool, you're going to see an outline. It's going to have a line underneath all the fonts, or all the writing here. This means that this is still editable. That means I can take this tool right here and I can say gross sauce, right? I can do anything I want to with that. This is why this becomes a little bit too, if you hand off your logo to somebody and you haven't like properly outlined it, you may be in some trouble. This is one that has been outlined, so you can sort of see that it's already been flattened. If I want to take a logo like this that still has editable fonts in it, what I will do is just go up to type and I'll say create outlines, and then Bob's your uncle, right? That's a really easy way of sort of putting it. Now the thing is that once it's in this form, I can take it and you know, come over here and change colors and do all kinds of stuff with it really easily. But once it's saved out as a flattened logo like this, it can't be unflattened. It can't be edited anymore. So you always want to keep two versions of the logo. And I'm just talking about your own stuff, not your client stuff. Don't get into this with them, but just for your own, this is kind of a hint, is keep two versions of it. Keep the outline version and keep the solid, and then keep the editable version. So in case you need to make any changes later on down the road. Okay, fonts. Like I said, everyone has many fonts on their computer, but they're not always the same. So don't just send stuff over to someone assuming they're going to have the same fonts. You can download a lot of fonts for free. So if you have a client that sends you a file and they're getting the message and you're getting a message that says that you don't have that font on your system, there's so many free fonts online. Go out there, go the extra mile for your customer. See if you can't download that font, okay? Because if you go and ask them to do this, they're not going to do it. It's going to be in the too hard book, so they're not going to do it. And then outline it for them, okay? And then number 3, if you cannot read your customer's message that they're having you put into onto a product, others are not going to be able to read it either. So be a pal to your customer and suggest a change. And this is what I'm talking about here. And I'm sure we've all seen this stuff, right? That comes across from suppliers to distributors, to service providers. We'll get something in that says, I need to put my logo onto something or my message. And it looks like something here on the right-hand side. We have no idea what that says, right? But we just go ahead and put it on there anyway. Be a pal. Say, hey, you know, I can't really read this message very well. So let's change it, right? You know, I got a designer I can call on that can make that change for us, or I can change it for you or something like this, because it's really important to get that message crossed, right? So you're being the bud at that point. And again, because we can make so many, you know, because there's so many fonts out there, so many colors to use, just because, and I use this on every single talk I give, because just because someone gives you a box of 96 crayons does not mean you have to use every color. Just because you can download any kind of font in the world doesn't mean you have to use every single font on whatever you use or whatever you're creating or whatever you're creating for your customer. And also colors. I think a lot of times people go a little overboard with colors. You know, that's another thing. So here's some random rules from Ask the Designer. Random rules: use no more than 2 fonts on something that you're putting together. Limit the amount of colors. Determine what will be your key color and choose the key color. Like ask your customer. Say you've got a brand. You know, what's the main color of your brand? Let's see if we can stick to all the products that we develop. If we can stick to a certain color scheme throughout, it's going to make this look tight and good and valuable. Okay, and then choose another color or 2 that can complement that, because not everybody makes something in a particular color. Be sure you look at the artwork file that the customer sends in case there are any issues. And I have a story that someone told me where they had printed something onto something, because they got an artwork file from a customer and they just went ahead and sent it on to the vendor, and the vendor printed it, and then all of a sudden it was a logo that they used like 6 years ago. So it was the wrong logo. So see if you can open it, and you can open it using Photoshop or Illustrator. Of course, a lot of times you could just open it through a through your preview window or different things like this. If you have a problem where you cannot open that file at all, call someone who can open it for you. Just don't assume, okay? And have someone proof or lay eyes on your work before it's printed, if it's complex, okay? All designers do this, is that we try to say to people we're doing artwork for, please proof this for me, because I'm so close to it. I may have misspelled something and I haven't noticed it, or something like this. Same thing. Let someone else look at it for you before you send it on. And people equate value or quality with value, or vice versa. So if you provide a product or a service that appears to be quality, right, the folks will feel that it has value. So then you can start to, if you sort of get a designer involved in something, you start to really look and care about the way that things look, you are going to notice that people are going to, that your work's going to look a whole lot more like it has a whole lot more quality than if you just whack on anything that you whack on. Okay. Number 6, vanilla is a good flavor, but is it memorable? Absolutely not. Right? We don't tell people on Facebook that we're eating vanilla ice cream and it's so yummy and blah, 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 blah. They look at us like a boring person, right? So start working on building that creative muscle yourself, okay? Keep out an ideas folder, pay attention to trends, create and keep Pinterest boards, really listen to your customers when they talk. Don't just assume that you know them and their product. And if something catches your eye when you're going about your day-to-day activities, ask yourself, stop, why did that catch my eye? Why did that billboard I just drove by catch my eye every morning, right? Something good that's happening there. Start to emulate that. When you start to see this, you're going to emulate it in your own work. And then number 7, very important, utilize design services early in a project. The better results will be. Because I hear every single day that someone needs something yesterday. And I can tell you is I cannot go back in time. So I cannot make yesterday happen, and neither can you. So if you can, try to give us a little bit of time when a designer is working on something, they'll be your best friend forever. And okay, that's me. If you guys need to, before we get on opening the floor to any questions here, you can always drop me a line, or, if you got a question or something like this, because all my work is done, like Paul said, within the industry. And you guys are my mates. So, and I know this industry quite well. I'm always around. So, yeah. So anyway, Paul, you there?
I'm here. Thanks, Chief.
So are there any questions that are coming? Because I'm not looking at those. I'm not looking at that chat.
Nothing in the chat window yet.
Okay.
But I encourage people to go ahead and submit their questions. When you were mentioning giving the designer some ideas about the audience, it also helps if you can give the designer some insight on what the buyer is like, and you can pick that up by looking around their office. If they've got a lot of Art Deco type stuff or a lot of retro art, that would probably be helpful for the designer to know that, so that he or she can design some things that are going to appeal to them. Now we've got some questions.
Okay.
When I get an art logo file, how can I tell if it's vector when it is a PDF? Do I have to have Illustrator?
Okay. Do you have to have Illustrator? This is the big question. I would suggest getting Illustrator. If I was in this industry and I'm doing what you guys are doing, it's the same. My parents are distributors, right? and they've been, and I'm really old now, so I've been involved in this industry for quite some time. And this is the age-old question: how can I tell? It's going to be difficult for you to always tell whether or not. One of the tricks, okay, that I suggest is that if you open up the file and you can zoom in on it, and let me kind of pull back here a moment. Okay, this was my little raster file I made here. If I really look at this super close, you see what those edges are doing, right? I've opened this up in Illustrator, but if I open it up as a PDF, you know how you can go into a PDF and you can do the same thing. And I don't want to switch it over because it's gonna mess me up with my presentation here. But you can do the same thing. You can make it really super big. If you start to see this sort of thing happening within your artwork, that means that that's a raster that's sitting in there, okay? And any kind of raster that's inside that PDF, when that happens, that's bad news. That's when, you know, the suppliers, hopefully there's a supplier or two out there, they're probably going, yeah. So I would say that is a really good trick to figuring out whether something is a raster vector. Because here's that little corner. If I blow it up, I can see how that's pixelated right there. If I come up to this corner and I blow it up, the same thing, same amount, you see how it's a nice clean line? I know that that's a vector. There. Does that help there, Paul?
Great. That was helpful. I didn't know that. A supplier asks, what software should they have in-house? You know, they've got their own designer dealing with a lot of distributors and the distributors, designers around the country. At minimum, what software should a supplier have on hand?
I believe you need to have Illustrator and Photoshop. And now you don't have to have the latest version, but for you suppliers, I suggest you do, because a lot of times right now is that Creative Cloud. They're making it so it's frustrating to me because I work in Illustrator 6. You know, and I'm going to have to switch over pretty soon, but I have like my own copy of CS6. I have my own copies of Photoshop and Illustrator and CS6. That Creative Cloud, when I get a file from someone, it might tell me that this has been done in a later version. And what it's trying to do is get everybody to come over to Creative Cloud at this point. It's not that expensive for you to get the Adobe Creative Cloud suite. I've got it right here. Look at me predicting all these questions here. This is a Creative Cloud here. You can get the entire set for $4.99. I mean, for $50 a month, right? It's worth it for you guys to go ahead and have that. Now, I know you're going to have to, I don't know what the license plan is, you know, so if you have more than one designer working on more than one computer, but yeah, there you go. Just say no to Corel. Corel what? Yuck.
Got a question about timing. You described the design process. I imagine it'd be pretty hard to say how long it's going to take for the muse or for lightning to strike with the idea, but how do you handle? How long is it going to? I need a new logo. How long is it going to take you to design that for me?
Well, the first thing that I would do is if somebody says I need a new logo, how long is this going to take? Because I usually say, when do you need it by? Okay, and the answer is usually yesterday. Okay, which is no good for me, right? It's no good for you either. But what I do is, with the stuff that I talked to you about regarding the brief, so I'm going to talk to you about, and this is the difference also between using a designer and using one of those $5 services that create a logo, right? Is I'm going to ask you some questions about, you know, what your likes and dislikes are. Can you give me some examples of some logos that you like? So that way I can sort of pick your brain a little bit when I can sort of see what what it is that you are going for, and hopefully, you know, it's not, it doesn't happen all the time, but as I've been doing this stuff for like 20 years now, most of the time I can pretty much nail it pretty quick, that I'm going to say it's going to take me then this long to do this logo in, or this piece of artwork, is once I get all that information from you. Because right now, if you say, hey, I need a logo, how long is it going to take? I don't know. I'll say, how long is a piece of string, right? So I try to gather that much information I gather as much information as possible with a brief, even if it's a virtual brief. And then I can tell you approximately how that's going to take. And if I haven't worked with you before as well, if you're a brand new client of mine, I can't, it's hard because sometimes people are a little bit more difficult than other people. So I like to kind of pad it out a little bit. If I haven't worked with you before, I might say something might take a little bit longer, just because I don't know if you're going to go, yeah, that's great, or no, I need to see it like this and like this and like this.
Perfect.
Okay.
What if your client sends you a font, something in a particular font, and you ask them what font it is, and they don't know, and you don't know? Is there a way to figure out an
Yes,
easy
there
way?
is. Yes, there is, Paul. There is very much. And I got something here called, this website that I live by, called What the Font, right? It's called what's it called? What the Font. If you just Google What the Font, right, it's going to come up. What you would do works pretty good, I have to say. So even if it doesn't nail the exact font, it's going to nail a font that's pretty close to it. And sometimes that's all we got to work with, is close, right? You will if you take a screenshot, or if your customer sends you the font and it as a JPEG, or they say PNG, GIF, or JPEG, you just upload it here and hit continue, and then it's going to it'll show you all the letters, and it's going to estimate what font that is for you. And it's really super simple at that point. I have to do that quite a bit because people send me kinds of mystery fonts, and because there's hundreds of thousands of designer fonts that are out there right now. If I can get something that's close, then we're good.
Wow, that's the tip of the day.
What the font?
That's awesome. I'm pretty sure this comment came from a supplier. When you were referring to the color shift earlier in the presentation, it would be a great idea to actually get a spec sample of the item, so that you can see exactly what the client can see exactly what they're going to buy, especially with critical imprint colors. And of course, particularly with well-known brands, if they say PMS 300, it better be 1300, or if you're doing Elmer's glue, it's got to be 165 orange. And it's been almost 30 years since I had the Elmer's glue account, but 165 orange is emblazoned in my brain.
Yeah, that's not going anywhere. Yes, that is that's a great idea too.
Anyone else has any other questions, please enter them on the chat box. When you talked about avoiding vanilla, I think that's also an important tip. A lot of us like to play it safe, but the big opportunities come from blazing some new trails and being bold enough to suggest some creative things. I started a company back in 1982 and had a very vanilla logo. I think probably with the initials of the company, Promotion Concepts Incorporated, so it was PCI. And a designer I worked with, he was, you could tell he was afraid, but he asked if he could submit a new logo design. And with fear and trembling, because he really didn't know how I was going to take it, submitted a logo using the kiwi bird, an allusion to my last name, Kiwi. And I would have never thought of it myself, but it was a stroke of genius. It made the company memorable. we were calling on very large companies, and I needed something that would break through. And we were able to do so many things with that Kiwi bird, from character marketing with plush to dimensional representations of it, to actually we had a mascot made out of it. And for a while, the Kiwi bird was the unofficial mascot of the Kalamazoo Wings Hockey Club, which was the AAA affiliate of the Dallas Stars. And the Kiwi bird was actually skating on the ice in between periods at hockey games. But my point is, it took some courage, and it took a designer really willing to go the whole 56 flavors approach to break through and come up with something great.
Yeah, that's that. Because designers are we're expected to practice creativity on demand, trademark. That I'm trademarking that, creativity on demand.
Right.
And we're used to having to do this stuff all the time, like flipping back and forth. And I know that sometimes it may seem, it's our job. That's what we become really, that's our expertise, or it should be, right? If you're working with a company that says, well, I just don't know, just don't go with them, right? You are not necessarily expected to always be coming up with creative ideas yourself. However, the more that you start to, like I said, keep your eyes open for trends when you're out there shopping, especially, we're in a trend-based industry. If you're out there shopping and you're in a shopping mall and you see t-shirts and there's things that take your eye to it and think, wow, that looks so retail and so cool. How can I then take this retail coolness and hand it over or do something with my clients? I mean, even suggesting a new t-shirt design for a customer, you don't have to be the designer. You can say, hey, your logo would look awesome on a t-shirt. However, I think it would be really cool to kind of do this in a more retail look, right? Because you want people to walk around with this t-shirt that's like a walking billboard for them, right? For their brand. But and people all love t-shirts. They all get them. And then what do when we get home is that we either sleep in them or we mow the yard in it, right? You want people to actually go out and wear these later on as cool, funky t-shirts that you would wear to a nightclub, right? Or out to go get drinks and you're walking around, people can see your logo out there, right? So you yourself, not even as a designer, can suggest, hey, Awesome Sauce Company, that logo would be awesome on a t-shirt, but then maybe let's just focus on using the cool looking brand right here, and let's like put a little gradient in it and put it on the t-shirt, see what happens. People would wear that, right, in a heartbeat. So anyway, I'm on a rant, but are there any more questions?
Don't see any other ones coming in.
Okay, I've got something to show you though, if you guys are interested. And a lot of times when you talk about creative process, a lot of designers too are really happy to show you sketches for stuff. Okay, when you're talking about a new, like Paul's talking about the Kiwi bird, right? Can I open that up a little bit? Let's see if we can see it. Give you guys a little insight here. You guys know, or some of you guys might know that I do common-use robot designs. And when I first started when I came up, when I talked to Mark Graham and the gang about what this guy was going to look like, these are the kind of concepts I sent to him. We were talking about, is he going to have pinched fingers? Is he on wheels? He was mobilized at one time on a wheel because I thought that was kind of adorable. However, if we went and ever turned him into a person in a costume, there was no way that was going to get around. So you could sort of see like this development of how this robot came into play. And here's another one. So SKUBot here, he was a little angular, he was a little weird, he had big old, looks like weird eyes and stuff like this. So there was a lot of this stuff. When I sent this through to commonsku, they can then go, hey, we're really digging this, not digging that kind of drugged up look right there, or it looks a bit too much like Adam Boy or whatever in this one. This is how sort of that creative process comes along a little bit. It's the same thing as like your designer may want to show. I hope this is not getting too confusing for everyone to look at here. Whoops. A lot of times it's kind of cool to show something on an actual shirt or on an actual product, making a virtual out of it. Your designer has a little bit more flexibility with a little bit more creativity involved in how, what a t-shirt could look like if you had that design on there. So I just wanted to kind of quickly show that if you can see this. This is something that's going back years, in the beginning of commonsku where it had all those colors in there. That was sort of some of the things that I would send to Mark to show him what that looked like there. Okay, how are we doing with questions, comments?
I got a new one of how does a production designer differ from a creative designer?
Okay, a production designer is, and I know there's going to be some production designers that completely kill me for this. A production designer is expected in their job to know how to use the programs and know the basic rules of graphics, what will look nice on something, and they make a layout look nice. Okay. A regular designer or someone like me, for instance, is not to say that a production artist, because there are production artists that can draw, but a lot of times they can't, right? I'm an illustrator, and that's how I started out, was illustrating kids' books and things like this. So I could always do graphic design well, but I was always a really good drawer, right? Really good illustrator. So I use a lot of the concepts and things that I develop when I'm thinking about creative work is something that's a little bit more outside the box. So I'm thinking about how it, the perspective something's drawn in, how the composition will look. I'm going to give you some options when it comes to colors and things like this. I'm going to kind of go overboard a little bit. And that's not to say that some production artists can't do this, but they're not required to do that. Do you think that answers it pretty good, Paul?
I think so.
Okay.
Do you recommend teaching folks the old school way of print and design from a layer standpoint to help understand how things cannot be printed?
Oh, I would love to. I think maybe because I'm a little old school, but I just think that really does help people understand the reasons why certain colors look good together, right? How things can be, how composition, a lot of times when you're doing regular artwork, especially in Illustrator, now I just typed this out. I didn't get in there and I didn't play with the kerning and all this kind of stuff. I tried to make sure that, things look like they're lined up kind of nice. This is kind of, this is your basic, your basic production artist kind of stuff here. But I think that if someone has actually learned those basics, if they get out and had some drawing classes or painting or sculpture, I spent time in museums, drawing stuff, or sketching in cemeteries and all kinds of bizarre things, that they had us do in school. That really did help me do and understand the way that shadows fall onto things, what's going to happen, especially when it comes to retail stuff now. I'm always looking at trends. I'm always following things. I'm looking at a lot of retro is in right now. So I know how to emulate that retro look for something else.
Is there a difference between design for websites versus print? There seems to be a trend that folks are getting logos designed for websites. And now want to reflect it on promotional products. Where does that line end?
Okay, a lot of times, and this could be because of a couple different things. A lot of times someone will set up a website, and I'm going to get off of that screen. Let's get on, stop looking at that file. A lot of times people will go to one of those logo companies. I'll make you a logo for $5 kind of thing, right? I'm going to quick whack up a logo for you. It's created as a JPEG. So actually I should have done that. It's going to be that rasterized thing because it's no sense in having a vector. You can't even see a vector logo on a website, right? It's going to be at 72 DPI because that's all that that's all your screen's showing you in your face is 72 pixels, right, per inch. They're not creating that logo for something that they're thinking about ever printing down the line. This is reasons why we run into having to convert those logos to vector all the time. And I know that you can get them done really super cheap. Like there's a lot of outsourcing companies that'll convert those logos for you. And it's kind of a shame because people aren't sort of thinking about that ahead of time. I, being the old school person that I am, I'm always thinking about print first and then internet later, because you can always take, like I said, you can take a file like this, but I can never then take this file and blow it up and expect that it's ever going to be printable, because it's going to do that on the edge, right? So I think that that's sort of where that comes into it. If you can hit a customer early on down the track, right? If they say, hey, I'm going to come to you, I need to get a logo done, I need to have all this other stuff, you need to think about it. If you start to talk to them about it in terms of business cards first. Oh, and that's a trick too, is that if someone says that they don't know if they have a vector logo, okay, ask them for the file that they had their business cards printed from, okay? It's 9 times out of 10, even if they don't, they can contact the person that printed their business cards and get that file. That file, 9 times out of 10, will have a vector version of that logo in it. And then you don't have to go through that rigmarole trying to find it, right? So if you can find something that's been printed ahead of time, like a business card, you know, if they go, oh, I just don't know what that is, I'm so confused, blah, 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 you just go, hey, send me your business card where you had your business card printed, and you can extract it from there.
Good tip. Lower right-hand corner, the Awesome Sauce logo with the gradient.
Yes.
Would that be considered 1 or 2 colors when printed?
That would be considered 4 color.
4 color?
Yes, that is many colors. Okay, going back to this a little bit, I'll kind of show you the difference here. Okay, I'm going to pull up this screen and the screen. Okay. Right now, if I click on this color down here, I'm going to see that this is a CMY, that this is built as a CYMK file, okay? And that's one particular color. But when I click onto this one, it all goes away because it's going, oh, wait, there's like 100,000 colors that are in this thing. When you have something that's being printed, like screen printed, your screen printer will hate you for this, right? So there's different ways of faking this. I can fake this color gradient, maybe turn it into like a 9 color or even a 4 color and still have it look kind of cool, right? You want to get something embroidered, for instance. Your digitizer for your embroidery company or whatever, they're going to look at this and go, ugh, that's like 3,000 colors right from there. This is whenever you have a logo done, because I love to have a little bit of gradient and stuff that I have personally, but I'll always make sure that I have a 1 color version of it. I'll have and I did this for Lisa Bibb's Gap logo, the regional, right? Because it's got a nice peach and it's all fully colored, but then I kind of came up with a 2 color version of it, a 4 color version of it, and 1 color version of it. So if it comes down to needing something that you may need to have this screen printed and they say, hey, you're going to limit your colors to like 4 colors, go back to your designer and say, you know, I got this old gradient logo here, and I need to turn it into something that I can print 4 colors, you know, and a creative person will be able to work that out for you pretty easily.
Perfect. It also was a great lead into the next question, which has to do with style guides. Do you recommend them, and how much does it run to, or how much extra is it to create style guides?
Okay.
And might explain what a style guide is.
Okay, a style guide. I'm going to actually see if I got one sitting up here that I can easily pull. 2 seconds.
Kind of a softball question. When T does our promotions at Roar logo for our trade show, she gives me a complete set of 1 color, 4 color, or as many different variations as there are. So I've got that in both vector and raster, and can respond accordingly.
Oh, here we go. Thank you for filling in that.
Yep, no problem.
I think that's really important to show. That's why I wanted to find this here. This is the gap. So if Lisa's wanting to use this, you know, if Lisa can then send this off to whoever's going to be printing something for her, and they're going to be able to find the version of whatever it is that, you know, whatever version of the logo. These are the versions of the logos that are allowed. Okay. And this is what I try to do whenever I do develop a logo for someone. Now, if someone's limited on price, right? If you got a customer that says, you know, they're a little mom and pop, they want a logo done, they don't have a lot of money, probably won't do a style guide for them, but anything that's involving corporate, you know, corporate-y sort of things, you know, something like for our industry that needs to be printed on lots of different kinds of stuff in lots of different kinds of ways, I will do something here. So I have full color. I have this in spot color, right? I have 1 color right here. I've kind of, you know, pulled this out along so that way, if they just want to use the peach on something, they can easily just take the peach and use that on something there. I also have the PMS colors of those particular colors that are in these. And, you know, I have rules listed. So tagline can have different color options, just as one of the 6 selected colors. So if you have something like this, if you have a style guide for your logo that you send out, that no one can mess it up. And if they mess it up, that's their trouble. That's their problem, right? And this is great protection for you and for your brand. You know, you need to protect your brand like you protect your dog or your daughter or something like this, right? It's important. You paid a lot of money for it. It's the thing that represents you. So I think that style guides are really important. I do provide one in an AI file. I tried to do one as a PDF and as I will do JPEGs of these too, because I can't always expect people to know how to convert a vector into a JPEG or something. So I'll give them a couple different sizes. I save it all into one folder and I send them that folder, and they have access to that folder of all those different pieces, bits and pieces.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much, T. That's really picked up some great tips today. We are at the end of our time together. Once again, as I end the meeting and as you leave it, you'll be directed to a survey, and that's how you get your CAS credits. Also want to remind you to mark your calendar for the next Wild Wednesday webinar on August 31st, when we talk about engagement in a digital world with Tiffany Tarr from Distributor Central. This presentation has been recorded, and when the recording is rendered, I will be posting it up on the MIPA Facebook page, as well as on the MIPA Wild Wednesday webinar website page for you as well. T does have this presentation in a PDF form. Her contact information is on the screen right now, or if you don't happen to catch that, you can always send an email to paul@mipa.org, and I'll make sure that you get it. Once again, T, it's fabulous. Great information. We really appreciate it. And to all of you, thanks for attending today. We'll talk to you next month.
Hey, take care, everybody.